This is stuff that's straight out of a sci-fi movie that you had no idea we could do until they released their videos and were like, yeah, we're actually already putting this into production. We're at the point where if you had, $1 billion and wanted to build C-3PO, you could already do that right this minute. It's possible.
The reality of a android or robotic made, house-made, is not really fiction anymore.
Hello, welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas and Sterling.
Hello.
We're missing Andrew today. We killed him and ate his bones, so it was very yummy.
I did not.
Oh, okay, that was just me then.
Cannibal?
Yeah. Well, just his bones. That's not cannibalism, right? What is just eating bones?
If he's a cannibal, I'll just tell him I have bone cancer.
It's still part of a human being.
Oh,
I would
okay.
still say that's cannibalistic.
Okay, well, but vampires aren't cannibals.
Vampires who pretend to be humans pretending to be vampires.
Okay.
Yeah, see, there's some nuance here. All right, we didn't really kill Andrew. He's just out today. Our topic for today is robots are coming. The robots are coming.
We're not robots, just humans, yes, like you.
There's been all sorts of announcements in the past week, a little bit more than that, of new fancy tech chips, new AI, new large language model updates, new robots specifically that have just been, I've been super duper impressed. This is stuff that's straight out of a sci-fi movie that you had no idea we could do until they released their videos and were like, yeah, we're actually already putting this into production.
Yeah, I guess just it's been a big week for big tech.
It has. So I guess where do we want to start? You want to start with Majorana?
Yeah, let's do that one.
Okay. All right. So Microsoft announced this just in the past week or so.
Right.
And it's something they've been working on for like 20 years. And it goes back to a theory from like the 1940s.
30s even, I think.
30s. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you read up on this, Thomas. Can you
a
give
little
us
bit.
a little
Yeah.
rundown?
So, and I don't even know how to say his name properly. Majorana 1 is what they're calling this chip.
But it's with a J, so it looks like Majorana.
Yeah, but I assume he was of Spanish descent. And it has to do with this Majorana particle that's been named after him. And as much as this is about as far as I can get with this.
Yeah, neither one of us are computer scientists.
So somehow it deals with the way this particle, teeny tiny particle, moves or has an opposing particle. And they've been able to harness this power within microprocessing for their chip. It's, I guess, a quantum chip.
A quantum processor.
Quantum processor. And so they've evidently taken, from what I understand, the theory and made it reality.
Yeah, this is the proof of concept.
Right. And so then they can, if they can then continue developing this now proof of concept, it will make their ability to compute data just go exponential.
Right.
And so it's, the next wave in microprocessing, basically.
Yeah, the way I've been explaining this to people in my life has been, so in like the 1940s, we invented the transistor, which, okay, most of us probably still don't even know what that is. But basically it allowed us to get rid of vacuum tubes and really miniaturize electronics in general, all sorts of gadgets, radios, TVs, all sorts of stuff like that. And so the transistor was kind of the first big step in this chain. And then in the 70s, we got the microprocessor, which is thousands of transistors all on one tiny microchip. And then in the past 50 years or so, what we've essentially been doing is just getting really good at making microprocessors. We haven't really stepped beyond that. Well, the Majorana 1 might be a step beyond that. It's obviously it's in the same chain.
Yeah.
But the what they call topological qubits is what's really the game changer here, because qubits are already in existence. A qubit is a quantum bit.
Right.
So a bit is, a 1 or a 0. That's a bit in a computer. A quantum bit can be 1, it can be 0, or it can be 1 or 0. You're not really sure.
Yeah.
It's 1, 0, and maybe. That's what makes a qubit.
Yeah. So this is going to be, if effectively we're on the next horizon of just the way we do our computing and the size of the computers we need to do massive processing have shrunk yet again. And the power has just gone exponential for what it can do.
Right.
And that's coming at, and then moving to our next kind of idea here, or topic, this is happening in the midst of AI development. And AI, of course, we know uses gobs of energy.
Yeah.
And especially computing power.
Unless you're the Chinese.
Yeah, if you believe DeepSeek.
Yeah.
And so this is happening with the AI development, which is, smart computer technology for basically. And we're starting to understand the application for that. And it's pretty impressive what the application for AI can be. And now also our robotics development is also coming along at the same time. And all these things potentially will blend in together.
Right. Even before this past week's slate of announcements, I'd already come to the realization, and I'd talked this over with a few of my more techie friends, and they'd confirmed that I'm on the right track. And even Grok, which is X's AI,
It's 3, right? It's third.
It's now Grok 3.
Yeah, third generation or something.
But I've confirmed it with techie friends and with Grok that. So in Star Wars, of course, there's the robot C-3PO, the gold skinned robot. I'm C-3PO, human cyborg relations. Well, his main job is to walk around, to follow you, to kind of watch what's going on, and to translate languages and stuff. Well, we're at the point where if you had, $1 billion and wanted to build C-3PO, you could already do that right this minute. It's possible. To me, that's just mind blowing. And that was before all these announcements. And these announcements are going to make C-3PO even better.
Yeah.
Or allow even crazier things.
Yeah. So the reality of a android or robotic housemaid is not really fiction anymore.
No, it's not fiction.
I mean, this thing is going to be it. Now, when it becomes affordable is another question, but the possibility is very real now. And we were looking at a bunch of videos showing developments of a lot of these different robots or androids. I don't know. What is the term that they like to use for these?
Mostly it seems like they're calling them robots, but of course android is, so like a robot can be anything. A Roomba, the little circle that rolls around on wheels, that's a robot. An android specifically means a robot that looks like a human.
Yeah. And there was a few, the one that they had hanging.
Oh yeah. So that's Clone Robotics, musculoskeletal robot.
That was just freaky human looking.
So yeah, if you haven't seen this video and you're not too squeamish, you can look this up. It's Clone Robotics. That's the name of the company. And just look up Clone Robotics musculoskeletal robot, or just skeleton robot or muscular robot, anything. You'll find it. And they released this video of it hanging from like what looks like meat hooks in a lab.
Right.
And it's because they've basically tried to simulate human muscles on a robot frame.
Right.
And they're doing it, I'm not exactly sure how, maybe with air at the moment, but they're moving to hydraulics to make those muscles work. But basically the robot is laying or hanging there and it's twitching just like you might when you're falling asleep, kind of thing. So the movement looks very human, but not deliberate, not intelligent, just creepy. And the whole video is got this kind of Geiger counter sound.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it's meant to make you creeped out a little bit.
It's almost like you're seeing, I think I'm almost watching Terminator come to life here.
I'll be back.
It's the when you see those other robots that do move, that are, I guess, androidal robots, and how they their ability, their bipeds, their ability to walk and balance, and you can't even knock them over.
Right.
That's where it starts to get really, and you combine that with the thought of giving them an AI brain.
Right. So it could be crazy.
That's where you're starting to think,
Some of these robots are already getting to the point where they're trying to integrate the AI brain. Some are just leaving that aside completely and just working on, let's make the robot work. Right. So like the Optimus robot that Elon Musk announced last year, that one has a little bit of AI, running things, but mostly, I don't know if you saw this announcement, but the Optimus announcement featured a bunch of these robots standing behind a bar and pouring drinks for people, chatting with them. Well, that wasn't really AI doing that. That was a human being wearing a helmet that let them see through the robot's eyes and speak through the robot's mouth and even move the arms probably. So we're getting to a blend that's going to come first where like a human can run a robot and, that may even have like military applications before too long, according to Palmer Luckey, who runs one of these big military companies.
And it always seems like the military is the first on the scene for this cutting edge tech.
Right. But I mean, that makes sense. Like, say you're a bomb defusal expert, it's going to make a lot more sense to give you a helmet and let the robot actually try to cut the wire than you doing that yourself.
Well, if you think also of like aircraft, part of the reason our aircrafts are limited has to do with the pilot, can only handle so many Gs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have to actually have the pilot in the aircraft, but piloting the aircraft on the ground or some other location, then you can do things with the aircraft that you could not do with a human inside it.
Yeah, that's true. I think the engineering would have to change because I think currently a lot of our, I didn't think about this ahead of time. So you're just bringing this on me.
These are just thoughts that are popping in my head. I think that we're on the cusp of a robot revolution, you could say. It's been coming.
And we're kind of using robot broadly to include AI here because it's all kind of what sci-fi told you robots would be.
Right. The whole self-driving vehicles. I think, that's been coming and coming and coming, and in some ways is already here.
To some degree. I've
degree.
heard recently people saying like Tesla's self-driving experience is less hyped than it's made out to be.
Right. I think these are the baby steps to it because you had to have the ability to have effectively an AI brain to drive a vehicle, self-drive a vehicle, but you also had to have computing power in order to be able to do that consistently, I think, and price-wise that could make it work. And if this, new chip offers that as the future, then the ability to run the information and computations necessary for AI to be able to do all these things with the speed necessary and the control necessary. I just think it's a matter of time, not really a matter of if.
Yeah, that I agree with that. It's a matter of time, not if. There might be questions about whether we want all this to happen, but it's well on the way. There's not really putting the genie back in the bottle.
We haven't gotten into the ethics question.
Before we get to the ethics question, one interesting thing I've noticed this week is, as you're mentioning, with the mayor on a chip.
Yeah.
That kind of, if that is everything Microsoft is claiming it is, and if they can get to 1 million qubits on one chip, that the chip fits in the palm of your hand. It's not a big chip. Yeah. So it can fit in, your laptop. Theoretically, I guess you'd have to figure that out. But size-wise, it's possible. Right. If you can get there, then the mayor on a chip could be powering, all of these robots, able to really streamline, reduce battery usage, reduce CPU usage, reduce all sorts of things that just make these more efficient and more plausible.
I wonder how it would impact Bitcoin mining and stuff like that.
I would bet it would make that easier too. But to finish my point, the interesting thing is that all these announcements that are coming out, if this information is really shared between these different companies, it's going to boost this way faster than we've seen already.
Oh, yeah.
Because once Microsoft starts sharing with Clone Robotics or XAI or NVIDIA or whoever, then, all the best ideas are going to be coming together. And they even just seeing, oh, wow, they're having luck with the musculoskeletal robot over at Clone Robotics. Maybe that informs what I'm going to do with my robot here at Helix Robotics, which is under Helix Robots are from, I have it here somewhere, Figure AI. And the Helix Robotics are really some of the ones that have the AI already built in, where you can hand them a bag of your groceries and these robots will be able to look at the items in the grocery bag and put them in your fridge or in your pantry, and they work together. It's really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the thing I'm most excited for here is all these announcements with the implication that maybe these companies will work together and combine their technologies.
I think, and I do think that it's kind of almost inevitable in that sense, because in order for these companies they're following pattern. I would say they would be following a pattern that's already well developed. Nobody's going to be starting from the ground up anymore. What you're trying to do is integrate the different technologies the different groups come up with. And so, you're going to be able to make, if money is at the bottom line, you're going to be able to make more money if you're working together than if you're just trying to keep it all to yourself, in a sense. So I do think this is just an inevitable progress.
One example of this sharing of technologies that's already happening is Georgia Tech and Meta is the company behind Facebook, have teamed up. So Meta already has this thing called Project Aria, which are these glasses that have, I'm not really wearing the glasses, I'm just referencing them, a camera built in, and it has all sorts of AI running in the glasses that tell you, what am I looking at? Where are my hands? Capturing all that in real time. Mm-hmm. And Georgia Tech is using that with an AI they've developed to basically skip the process on their part of having to develop an optical system for the robot. They're just using Project Aria and skipping that step entirely. And then what they're also doing is letting humans wear these Project Aria glasses and record what they're doing that are things the robot needs to learn. So like the human will fold laundry, and then the robot can just watch the human doing that and mimic it and learn that way.
It's kind of like the Matrix where they just plug it in and it learns.
Right.
You know?
That was something I went into with Grok last night. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
There's usually like a timestamp where, okay, we've updated it with all the new training data up to February 24th at 2:25 p.m.
Yeah.
And then at 2:26, if something new happens, it won't know anything about it.
Well, part of that is probably a processing issue as well.
Certainly that's a big issue, but also you just want to make sure what the results of the data you're inputting into the AI are going to have.
Okay.
So you don't want to, have it constantly updating on its own without a human evaluating it, because maybe they're going to say, kill all humans.
Skynet.
Right. So there's a lot of safety protocols that slow this down. We're not complaining about that. I am all for safety protocols.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously. It is interesting because the way we're going about this one, we have the history, like we noted, of movies that warn effectively about a future where robots become sentient and then attack humanity.
Right.
I'm not really worried about that, but you could see, like, for example, some of these military or potential military android bots that, if they don't suffer from the things potentially that a soldier would, which would be fatigue in the same way, fear in the same way. Their targeting system is going to be consistently more accurate than a human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And imagine going up against that as a
Taliban member.
Right.
Right.
Oh, and there's also the concept of you could kind of say the hive mind in these fighters. So each individual one, but they're all working in unison as to one brain.
Yeah. So that's something that Palmer Luckey, who I mentioned earlier, he runs the defense company Anduril Industries, which he pointed out, Anduril Industries, the initials there are AI, which he's not been working in AI directly until a little bit more recently, but when he started the company, he knew that's where the world was going.
Okay.
But he has an AI called Lattice AI, Lattice. And Lattice is used for all sorts of military hardware. So you can integrate Lattice AI into your drone, fully autonomous drone, and let it be the building block on which you put, all the tasks that drone has to do. But you can also do it with a tank or a truck or maybe even a gun or something.
I see.
But he's also talking about letting all those different items that Lattice is running on share their visual data amongst each other. Yeah. So you're going to be able to do something like if I can see a guy behind a wall over there that you can't see, and we're both wearing some Lattice linked glasses, you'll know he's there because I know he's there in real time, that's kind of the hive mind stuff.
Yeah. And having, so that's the potential for, like you say, military and its development of weaponry surrounding this. It's not like bullets become more lethal in the sense that there's a technology with the bullet itself. It's the lethality is because of the ability to make the bullet hit exactly where you want it to.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's kind of the component here. And that's what makes it's more precise. Maybe that's the better way of saying it. It's like precision warfare on steroids.
Yeah. I just want to, going back to the Lattice, I may have been mixing up Lattice with something else Palmer was talking about, but those are all things he was discussing.
Yeah.
Just to be clear there. But yeah, the changes are not going to be, we're not reinventing the internal combustion engine, at least not yet, or reinventing the way the gun works.
Right.
But we're reinventing how do you target the gun? How do you drive the car?
Yeah. How things work together, the communication element. There's also, what impact is this technology going to have, for example, on a lot of different sectors, but let's take the airline industry. We've just seen a month where there's been seemingly a lot of plane accidents, unfortunately. How many of these are due to pilot error? It's seemingly at least a couple of them.
At least a couple, yeah.
Would AI in the future be able to be more precise and these types of human-based mistakes, would AI make fewer of them or be able to eliminate them? And if so, how would that impact, let's say, an airplane? Like if you're flying on a commuter jet, let's say, and it's all AI operated,
right?
And
that's not some tech sci-fi idea. That's something that could happen.
No, it definitely is, because the idea is it can take in way more data instantly, process that data, and recognize things that just a single human, even several human beings, aren't going to be able to recognize necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the advantage to the AI. It can read things like wind speed, temperature, things, which we have instruments within the plane that are already reading them. The AI can take all those and keep full focus track of them and not get lost. Whereas we, even though we can, kind of multitask, maybe that's the best way to put it. It can multitask in a way that we couldn't multitask. Yeah,
I don't even know about multitask so much as just give each task its own autonomous intelligence to deal with that task.
Right, but that's kind of the concept behind multitasking.
Right.
You can
not for a human, but yeah.
Well, for a human, you can kind of be doing multiple things at the same time and keep well enough a track of them that, when we talk about getting distracted, when we get distracted, it's because we've lost focus on a certain task and we stop doing that task or focusing our task and make mistakes because of it. Well, the AI is not going to do that because it can have like multi-focus on multitask.
Yeah, maybe. I just nothing I was reading was talking about that specifically, but that seems possible.
Yeah, I just think that's an element. It's that communication element that it's going to be able to take that data and keep track of it in a way that we just can't.
Yeah, certainly they can process data faster and in much greater quantity than human beings can.
Now, the error, of course, is going to come into, generally speaking, how well the programming has been written for the AI to be able to do all this stuff.
Right. If you're having a robot plane fly around and then the robot has a blue screen of death moment where it just crashes, what are you going to do? Of course, a human can have a stroke. Same thing could happen.
Yeah.
But it feels different with a robot because I guess robots are new.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's. I think there is that element of, well, if it's new, anything that's cutting edge, there's going to be a period. Just like let's take a new model of a vehicle. Let's take a truck or something. Rule of thumb generally is, for any buyers out there who want to buy the brand new first generation of a certain vehicle, rule of thumb generally is if you have the ability to be patient, wait until a couple of years have passed and a couple renditions, because inevitably that first generation is going to have the most issues.
Yeah, they call that first generation the bleeding edge of a technology, because that's where you end up getting cut and bleeding.
And so we're kind of actually, I think we're moving a little bit past the bleeding edge on all of this stuff.
Quite a bit.
Not this new.
The Majorana. No.
Majorana, that is the bleeding edge. But some of this other stuff, AI, we're already, like you said, Grok 3, and that's just one AI. There's how many AIs out there? There's tons of them.
Oh, there's tons. And because we haven't touched on this, Grok 3 is one of the things that announced in the past week or so.
Yeah.
It's a big step up from Grok 1, or Grok 2, which was the one that we were using. And currently it seems to be the best AI large language model on the market, better than DeepSeek, better than ChatGPT. But of course, just a couple weeks ago, we were freaking out about DeepSeek as it was the best one on the market, and it was so much cheaper than anything else. So the AI race is happening. It's a race. This is not a plodding effort. This is, people are moving as fast as they can to make this happen, which is, there's room for danger there, certainly. But it's also very exciting. I spent almost like the entire last weekend when I was by myself just chatting with Grok about all sorts of stuff. It's really fascinating.
See, there's where I can see the problematic future of, the better AI gets, the more it becomes like another human.
Yeah, I mean that is going to be a threat for sure. Is like, okay, I'm spending too much time on Grok here. I need to go talk to a real human being. Because the thing about Grok is, it's almost never going to tell you something you don't want to hear.
That's interesting. Yeah,
I mean, sometimes it will. If you're just wrong about something and you're asking it to tell you you're right, it'll just say no.
Yeah.
But it will, try to frame things in a way that'll keep you engaged, which is, that's a little bit dangerous. But we're getting used to that with social media too.
Right. So that segues into, I think, the question that we kind of hinted at earlier, but that is, what about the ethics of all this?
Right. So like, okay, like with humanoid robots, you know, some of the first things that are going to happen are all sorts of sins and crimes and all sorts of stuff once that hits the main market. Once every American has a humanoid robot made or whatever, there's going to be all sorts of immoral stuff happening with those, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like that's just, we know that.
Well, wait, let's take one thought popped in my head. What if, you know, this becomes so ubiquitous that everybody like has a maid robot?
Yeah.
And what if somebody hacks it and is able to get it to murder the person who murdered?
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
You know, these are the kind of the questions of every time technology advances, there's always clear positives, but there always is associated with it.
Yeah.
Negative, you know, because technology is a reflection of humanity, and humanity is fallen, has a selfish, sinful heart.
Right.
And so that technology can be used for good, but it also very easily can be used for evil. And, you know.
Yeah. And even to the degree that these robots or AIs are intelligences, because they are intelligences. They're not
but they're not conscience.
They're not consciences. They're not people, but they are intelligences. But to the degree that their intelligence is made in man's image, they're going to be fallen, just like men are.
Yeah.
Just interestingly, you asked about if I hacked your robot made to murder you, Thomas.
Yeah.
Well, that just made me think of, you know, since we're talking about sci-fi stuff, let's bring in some actual sci-fi. So famously in the sci-fi world, there's these three rules of robotics written by Isaac Asimov. And he wrote this in 1942, and it is presented in the Handbook of Robotics, 56th edition, 2058 AD. So, you know, he's not that far off.
Yeah.
By 2058, we might have to have a Handbook of Robotics.
Yeah.
So his three rules for the robots are: a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. So if you program that in, I won't be able to murder you with your maid.
Right. It's the idea, yeah.
The second rule is a robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where those orders would conflict with the first law. So again, I can't murder you. And 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So you don't want it throwing itself off a cliff, but if it has to choose between it getting hit by a car or you getting hit by a car, you want it to get hit by the car.
Right. What's this called?
Those are the 3 laws of robotics, or just Asimov's laws.
Okay. I feel like Star Trek Next Generation dealt with this somewhat, but maybe I'm...
Well, they definitely dive in on...
with Data.
Because they've got the character of Data. There's like an episode where someone from Starfleet comes and tries to say, Data's a tool, I'm going to come dissect him to figure out how to reproduce him. And Picard and Riker and the whole crew of the Enterprise has to defend him. And like, Data's not a tool, he's a person. And it's a very interesting episode.
Well, even getting to that point, if and when, and we're going to say when, there is, you know, this technology of, let's just take the robot maids, for example. Depending on how they're developed, and they're going to be developed by multiple companies, and so they're going to be different features and all this other stuff. But the more human they look and kind of behave, and of course, it's given the ability to speak and all this other stuff and to interact.
Right. And if we train them to mimic our emotional responses.
There's going to be there's going to be this sense almost of a personification of robots.
Oh, there'll be robots. I bet you by the end of this year, there will be groups of robots' rights activists.
Right. And so that's going to come into it, which is going to be fascinating, because then you're going to ask the question, well, what are human rights based upon? Mm-hmm. Because these robots are alive only so far as they have the electricity running through them, powering them.
Yeah, I guess so. Same could be said of a human. We run on electric impulses as well.
Yeah, but then what is it that makes us human that's different from the animals? Because the animals are the same thing. So you have, you know, we know as you know, as Christians, we have a soul. We have
the breath of God.
Right. So that will be an interesting thing that's going to become more into the forefront, I predict. We have kind of had this story of the robot being like a human for a long time, like Star Wars with C-3PO, R2-D2, you know, they're like humans. But interestingly enough, in Star Wars, they don't treat them like humans.
No, they joke about him. Like there's a line where Obi-Wan says, well, if droids could think, there'd be none of us here, would there?
Yeah. And then like the whole thing of, I'm thinking of, Empire Strikes Back, where, C-3PO gets blown to bits or blown apart.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And
there's another scene in the same movie, though, where he's complaining while Han is trying to pilot the Falcon through an asteroid field. And
he just shuts him off.
He just says, Leia, turn him off. And Leia reaches over and just turns 3PO off.
Yeah.
Just like, he's not a person. They don't have any qualms about it.
And see, to me, that's like a healthier kind of recognition of what androids are in Star Wars, at least. They recognize these are not human beings. And so there is inherently, they don't have the same value kind of attitude.
Yeah.
I don't know, though, based upon our world, if that would actually hold the same.
No, I don't think it would, especially in the context of Star Wars, if it was our modern society dealing with that kind of reality. Because in Star Wars, of course, there are, all sorts of aliens and stuff. It's not just human.
Right.
So like, what is the distinction here? But yeah, even in our real world with the real robots that are being announced, I guarantee there will be people saying, you can't take it apart. You can't replace its arm. You can't update its software. It's a person within 12 months of today.
It's going to be the kind of concept of the memory element that they'll tie to the robot. I'm thinking of, there was the more modern Star Wars movie Solo.
Yeah.
Where you had a kind of a robot character that was the first time in Star Wars where I would have to say that I could recall that the android was almost treated more like a human.
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely an aspect of the writers of the movie letting their attitudes influence Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Because
no doubt.
You're right. Up until that point in Star Wars, robots are just their things.
Yeah.
And no one has questions about that. But then suddenly in Solo, there's this robot that Lando's in love with, or that's in love with Lando, or some weird thing there.
Right.
And it's a robots rights activist for sure. And it literally leads a robot revolt at one point. And it's I guess it's interesting. It's something I would have preferred not to have been explored in Star Wars, because Star Wars has set rules already. But
well, I don't think they did it fairly based upon, like you said, what we know of Star Wars, because that would have been a prequel, right?
Right.
But then we have other movies, like I'm thinking of WALL-E is a classic example of a robot character that is given a personality, and the audience is emotionally connected to WALL-E's fate.
More to him than any of the humans in the story.
Speaking of a WALL-E world, if you have robots doing everything, does humanity turn into a bunch of fat blobs that are just floating along?
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of mixing our sci-fi metaphors here, but you do run into either the WALL-E problem where everyone's just flat blobs floating along, as you said, or to mix in a different thing from the Time Machine, the Eloi, if you know that story. They're futuristic race of humans who have been so pampered and so comforted their whole lives that they've like completely lost their problem-solving ability. Mm-hmm. And like they can't think critically. They're just out to play and have fun, and that's all they know how to do.
Yeah, it's just live for pleasure. Yeah, in that, if so, that's one of the ethical questions regarding. Let's take the maid robot again. If the maid robot becomes cheap enough, and theoretically, all you have to do is buy the robot if you have the money. Once you got it, and then you have to have the energy, pay for the energy to power it. But beyond that, you're not paying it a wage. You've bought it. It's doing the job.
There will be some maintenance cost.
Such and such, right? But you could see entire industries suddenly get wiped out if it was cheap enough for like hotel industry. Hotel maids could go, well, if hotels like, let's say, Hilton or something, they get rid of all their maids and they have all these robots that just are doing everything, and they're doing it, as well. They don't get tired, etc. Other than, like you said, what is maintenance cost going to be in something like that? Now, there's always going to be those issues. Nothing's perfect, but it could force out folks that were making a living that way. Or let's say the fast food industry, robots are making everybody's burgers and everything.
I don't know if you've been in a Taco Bell recently, but the fast food industry is already radically changing. There's like maybe 3 people employed in any of the fast food places, like actually on the clock in any of the fast food places you go to.
Isn't there a fast food place that's entirely robotic, or is that?
I'm sure there is. I don't know of it.
Be interesting to see that, but we could imagine a world where there's a relatively small sized building that's just a drive-through that you drive up to, you give your order, you come around, you pay for it, and the robot hands you your food.
Yeah. We're well on the way. There's this funny video online of, so in some places, apparently the person who takes your order isn't a person anymore. It's an AI.
Yeah.
And so there's this funny video of someone pulling up who knows that it's an AI taking his order. And he starts off the order with, yeah, can I get 5,000 waters? And the AI starts answering, sure thing, can I? And then it's cut off and a human intervenes and is like, hey, what can I get you? So there will be some requirement, especially from human interference, that there is a human supervising.
Right. And so that, I mean, that opens up the whole thing of regulating this industry, because any industry like this, there's going to be, you know, like you kind of, the three laws of Asimov's laws, right? There's going to be also rules designed around ethics, among other things, to kind of regulate the industry and say, okay, how do we keep this within the bounds? What are the boundaries? Yeah. I mean, first, you know, that is a big question. What are the boundaries? And you're going to have certain interest groups, certain unions that are going to be concerned. So let's say, I don't know if there is a union for the maid industry, but maybe there is. They're going
to be up in arms.
Yeah, they're going to object and say, no, we don't want robots taking your jobs.
Yeah. So here's my take on all of this, all of the points you were raising, especially regarding driving humans out of all these industries, which, okay, I am kind of, emotion isn't my first filter by which I look at things. So, you know, pardon me if I'm a little bit cold on this issue, but I think it's inevitable. I think a lot of these industries, humans are going to be driven out. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'll say I don't see that as all that much different. If, like, say, an American who works as a janitor finds out, you know, he's been replaced by a robot, is that all that different from him finding out he's been replaced by illegal immigrant who works for $3 an hour? Is that significantly different? I don't really see it as all that different, and that's getting a little bit.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, there's always, we have at least over the last arguably 200 plus years, technological development that makes certain industries or certain jobs obsolete. Yeah. Right. Especially over the last 100 years. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, certain industries, certain people who are in that industry get displaced and they've got to find other work.
Right. And I think that's the key. I think we're going to find all sorts of new things to do. I don't believe there's some point where we've invented machines to do all the things human beings want to do. I think human beings will find new things to do. I do genuinely think that maybe it'll all move into the kind of entertainment world, the literary world, the artistic world. Maybe it won't. Maybe we'll find new
we'll all be artists.
Maybe we'll find more hardworking things to do where you need a human back and a robot just won't do. Maybe we'll find those areas. And especially as, you know, if Elon Musk has his way, as we start trying to get to Mars and the moon and stuff, you know, who knows what the future may bring. I don't think we're going to end up in the world with the Eloi or the floating fat people from WALL-E.
Okay. I mean, I would say yes, I agree with you to a point, but if you look at America today and America circa 1970, what do we know about America today between those two? I would say, at least as far as people's weight, the percentage of overweight Americans from 1970, I think, was somewhere around the like 15 percentile. It was rather low.
Yeah, I'll ask Grok and get an exact answer for you.
And then ask Grok for today.
Yeah, so it'll take a second to answer. So I asked 1970 obesity in the U.S. versus 2025, and we're going to read you the answer from Grok 3. I tell you this, if you've never tried out any of these AIs, especially the most recent ones, you are missing out. This is like, it's not really like anything you've known before. Okay, so here's a concise comparison of obesity in 1970 versus 2025. Based on historical data and current trends. So relatively low in the 70s, about 15% of adults aged 20 or older were obese with a BMI of 30 or higher. 2025, 40% of adults are obese.
Yeah. So yes and no to your, you know, floating around as blobs.
Yeah.
Because what we also have seen since 1970 is technological development to the degree that, yes, a lot of people are focusing on diets, but I would say we've also become a lot more sedentary in our jobs. People sit behind desks, that's what we do. We sit behind desks and that's what we do all day long. And so our bodies aren't physically active in the same way that I would argue probably adults were more physically active in the 1970s in their job.
Right. I agree that the advent of all these technological innovations has had the result of eliminating kind of natural exercise that humans got throughout the day. And I think that's a big part of why we have become so obese. It's not the only reason, but it's a big part of it.
Yeah.
But I think maybe I'm hopelessly optimistic, but I think that's a temporary thing. I think maybe it takes a generation or 2 or 3 to figure that out. And then once you're used to having all these mechanical things taking care of those issues, you find a new way to spend your human life that doesn't require, I don't think anyone's going to argue that hand carrying your laundry down to the stream and hand washing it is really something that makes or breaks the human experience. Like, that's not something you need to be doing, but it was a pretty good workout.
Yeah.
And now the washing machine does it.
Yeah.
And so we're going to figure these things out. And I really believe we'll get to a point, maybe by 2100, maybe sooner, maybe later, where the obesity issue is back, where it should be.
Well, my only pushback against that is I haven't seen it yet showing me something that would indicate. I mean, we do have more of a focus on, I would probably venture, we have more of a focus on health than we maybe ever have as a country, as far as what we eat, exercise, etc. And yet, I would say we've been doing this kind of focus on health that I can recall for at least the last 20 years, but especially the last decade. And yet the trending hasn't gone, it's not changed. And so that's where I'm like, I think there has to be something lifestyle that's pretty significant lifestyle change to the way people are working I don't see something that's going to make people work more manually than non-manually. I don't know how to put that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think manual labor is going to be done more and more by mechanisms.
Yeah.
But I think, there's all sorts of options that could still prevent the rise of obesity and just a change in culture where more athletic hobbies are pursued over more sedentary hobbies might happen, especially as people are like, well, I already spent 8 hours sitting behind a desk. Now I want to go move around and do something. Well, I think you might have that, but there's also the key point that we might just figure out ways to keep us from getting fat. Like, we might figure out ways where either the food's really healthy or like Ozempic, where you're just not inclined to eat as much.
Yeah, but that's not, I don't know if that's healthy though. I would say this, to the point where, this was kind of one of the points I brought up that's possibly negative in regards to the development of AI and robotics. We do know that AI tech in gaming is also developing very rapidly, and the whole kind of like full immersion experience in the game. So you're putting on the mask and you're physically moving around in the world.
Right.
So for children who play physically just naturally, that's what you're supposed to be. And, the epidemic of obesity in children is because one argument is they've been sitting around watching TV or playing video games and not moving. Well, here's an opportunity for them to actually be engaged in video gaming, but they're actually moving within the world.
Right. That's an option too. Yeah.
So the only thing that can start, but we already see this, is the disconnect or the blurring of fantasy and reality. Yeah.
It's true. We used to view, like, you used to say, I'm going to go on the computer. In the 2000s, you'd say, I'm going to go on the computer, or I'm going to go on Facebook or something. And now it's just like, well, of course I'm on the computer at all times while I'm doing everything else.
Yeah.
Like, there's never a moment when I'm not on the computer. So you don't say that anymore. So there is this blurring of the line between the digital world and the real physical world.
Yeah, and I don't see that getting less. I think that's going to get more because everything is being so integrated.
Yeah, barring a catastrophe, I think you're right.
So,
well, we've been going for 45 minutes.
So we definitely don't have the answers.
No.
We're just some observations.
Yeah. We've just kind of been spitballing, just like, certainly the things we're telling you about, these clone robotics, muscular robots, the Mayor on a chip, the lattice AI in military hardware, all those things are real. Those things are happening. You can build C-3PO. That's a fact if you have gobs of money to throw at it. And where do you think the world's going to go? Where do you think we're going to be in 2030 with all this new technology, or 2035? I think it's going to be like nothing that's come before. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting and it's going to be hard to predict. I mean, we're seeing things, but it's kind of like with the internet I just remember when the internet was dawning and we were like, oh, cool. We can send letters to each other without having to send them through the, post office. And our understanding of what it would turn into was, I'm sure some people were conceiving of it, but I mean, a lot of us weren't. And I think similarly with AI, we're starting to see what it can do, but I think we're a long way from really appreciating what this Pandora's box we've opened up is going to result in.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And certainly lots of people still haven't even played with Grok yet, like I have.
Yeah.
So the culture has no idea what's coming yet. And even the people who are paying attention, really, they also have no idea what's coming. It's pretty interesting. I'm very hopeful. I think this is super exciting, and all sorts of stuff I wanted to have as a kid is now becoming reality. So I'm pretty excited. But
your fantasies come true.
There are definitely risks to health. There's risks to like life and limb. There's risks to mental health. There's all sorts of risks. Yeah. I think they're worth taking, but maybe you disagree. Let me know. Tell me, hey, Sterling, you're stupid. We need to go back to, the way the Amish live. That's clearly better. Just let me know. If you're thinking that, you're probably not watching the podcast though. So I guess you won't tell me. All right. Well, I think that's our episode, Thomas.
Yeah.
All right. So this has been our episode on The Robots Are Coming. The Robots Are Coming. We are the Pop Culture Contrarian, brought to you by the Patriot Post. The Patriot Post is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. It's right and it's free. Be sure to like and subscribe. And when you're liking and subscribing on our Pop Culture Contrarian, hit the bell icon on YouTube so you see when we upload a video. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.